You ever feel drained after spending time with someone? Not just tired. Drained. Like some part of your spirit has been slowly siphoned out of you, and you can't quite explain why. They didn't scream. They didn't hit. They didn't insult you. But somehow, you leave those interactions smaller, less sure of yourself, a little more broken than before. At first, you think it's your fault. Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe they're just having a bad day. But then it keeps happening, over and over again. And one day, you realize it's not you, it's them. Jordan Peterson, clinical psychologist, philosopher, and one of the most controversial minds in modern neuropsychology, has seen this pattern play out across thousands of lives. He warns us not just about evil people, but about dangerous ones, subtle destroyers, emotional parasites, the kinds of people who won't pull a knife, but will let you bleed out emotionally, one drop at a time. In this video, we'll explore the 6 kinds of people Jordan Peterson says will destroy your life. Not with fire, but with corrosion. And if you don't learn to see them clearly, you won't just lose time, you'll lose yourself. It starts with sympathy. You hear their story, the pain, the betrayal, the never-ending string of misfortunes, and your heart opens. You want to help. You should help, right? But weeks pass, then months, and no matter how much advice you offer, how much support you give, or how many fires you put out for them, nothing changes. In fact, it gets worse. They're drowning, and they're pulling you under with them. Jordan B. Peterson has a name for this pattern: the tyranny of helplessness. It's a psychological state where victimhood becomes identity, and identity becomes a shield from responsibility. He says, you don't get to choose not to take responsibility. You only get to choose whether to take it voluntarily or whether it will be forced upon you by the tragedy of life. In the world of clinical psychology, this dynamic is called learned helplessness, a form of behavioral conditioning where repeated failure leads to a total surrender of personal agency. From a neuropsychology standpoint, the brain wires itself to expect defeat, to fear effort, to rely on others not for support, but for salvation. But here's what Jordan Peterson motivation is really about. It's not just lifting yourself up. It's refusing to let others pull you down. And this kind of chronic victim doesn't just want help. They want a host. Someone to carry the weight of their consequences. Someone to validate their inertia. Someone to keep them small, so they never have to confront the terrifying truth that their life is their responsibility. Peterson warns us, you're not virtuous for rescuing someone who's refusing to climb. You're being devoured by your own need to feel needed. This is where philosophy meets practicality. This is where apologetics, the defense of truth, becomes personal. Because the most dangerous lie isn't the one you tell the world. It's the one you let someone else tell you, over and over, until you start to believe it. So what do? You stop rescuing. You observe their effort. You set boundaries, not as punishment, but as proof that you believe they are capable. And if they walk away, good. Because if they can't stand on their own, they were never meant to walk beside you. They act like they've seen the world for what it really is, and maybe they have. But instead of rising above the darkness, they became it. You bring up your dreams, your values, your plans to improve your life, and they scoff, roll their eyes, call it naive. They call it realism. But underneath it, contempt. Jordan Peterson has studied these people closely, in therapy rooms, in classrooms, in positions of power. He calls them cynical manipulators, people who weaponize skepticism not to find truth, but to poison it. He says, there's a type of person who sees the light and rushes to extinguish it, because your hope reminds them of everything they've given up on. It's not just pessimism. It's a deep-rooted neuropsychological defense mechanism. These individuals have likely been betrayed, disappointed, maybe even traumatized. But instead of healing, they armored up with sarcasm and superiority. They tear others down, not because they're strong, but because they're terrified. In clinical psychology, this is often linked to suppressed resentment and a distorted inner philosophy, one where belief itself is seen as a liability. But Peterson warns us, the destruction of belief is not intelligence, it's despair disguised as wisdom. And that's where it gets dangerous, because you might start to believe them. Their tone is confident, their logic is sharp, but what they really want isn't truth, it's control. Control over your narrative, over your fire, over your motivation to keep going. Jordan B. Peterson. Motivation is grounded in the idea that meaning is not optional. It's vital. He says, the antidote to suffering is not nihilism, it's purpose. The cynical manipulator strips you of that purpose, one sarcastic comment at a time. They don't need to yell. They don't need to hit. All they need is doubt. And once they plant it in your mind, they water it with irony until you stop believing in anything at all. But philosophy, at its core, is a fight for clarity. Apologetics is a defense, not just of doctrine, but of hope. And if someone is constantly attacking your hope, your joy, your ambition, they're not your friend. They're your anchor. So what do? You separate intelligence from bitterness. You guard your purpose. And you remember, anyone who mocks meaning has already lost theirs. They walk into a room, and somehow, the center shifts. Their stories dominate. Their opinions drown out yours. Their needs become your emergency. At first, you mistake it for confidence, even brilliance, but slowly you realize it's not about connection, it's about control. This is the realm of the narcissist, and Jordan Peterson doesn't mince words about their impact. He says, when someone refuses to take responsibility for their life, they inevitably make you responsible for it instead. That's what makes narcissists so dangerous. They're not villains in the traditional sense. They're hollow empires, held up by flattery, blame-shifting, and an endless hunger for validation. In clinical psychology, narcissism is often linked to early trauma, where the child learns that love is conditional and vulnerability equals weakness. So, they construct a mask, a grandiose persona, and beneath it, a terrified, undeveloped self. From a neuropsychology perspective, the narcissist's brain becomes wired for external validation. They can't self-regulate. They need applause to feel alive, and they'll do anything to keep it coming. That's when you enter the picture. They don't want your love. They want your reflection. They want you to orbit them, to affirm their story, to sacrifice your authenticity to keep their image intact. And if you stop, if you dare to set a boundary, that's when you'll see it. The infamous Jordan Peterson angry archetype, mirrored back in them. Not as righteous fury, but as entitlement, rage, or cold detachment. Peterson warns, there's a type of person who will punish you for being honest, for having needs, for not playing the role they assigned you. this isn't just a relational problem, it's a philosophical one. Because narcissists aren't just allergic to truth, they're at war with it. And if you live in that war zone long enough, you start lying too. You smile when you're in pain. You agree just to avoid conflict. You disappear, piece by piece, just to keep the peace. So what's the tool? It's clarity. In apologetics, you defend doctrine. In life, you defend your soul. Jordan Peterson. Motivation teaches that your path begins when you accept radical responsibility for your voice, your truth, your future. And the narcissist? They'll never do that. But you can. Walk away. Not in anger, in sovereignty. They live in crisis. Every phone call is an emergency. Every week is a new disaster. And somehow, you're always expected to help clean it up. At first, it feels like they need you, like you're the only stable thing in their unraveling world. But over time, a darker pattern emerges. They don't want order. They feed on chaos. Jordan Peterson calls this type the chaos bringer, the person who refuses to self-regulate and drags others into their instability instead. He says, "You are not obligated to serve as a surrogate order for someone who will not make order of their own soul." It's not just drama. It's a psychological ecosystem built on emotional volatility. From a clinical psychology perspective, these individuals often suffer from unprocessed trauma or personality instability. But what makes them dangerous isn't the chaos, it's their unwillingness to confront it. And from a neuropsychology standpoint, they're addicted to the chemical surge of disorder, adrenaline, dopamine, even cortisol. Their nervous system is calibrated for turmoil. They don't know how to function in calm, so when peace comes, they sabotage it. They don't want safety. They want intensity. Peterson teaches that order is not oppression. It's structure, direction, meaning. But to the chaos bringer, order feels like death. So they destroy it. They'll miss deadlines, break promises, blow up relationships, then act like victims of fate. But behind every catastrophe is 1,000 ignored decisions. And if you're not careful, you'll get pulled into their spiral. You'll start living reactively, just like them, responding instead of choosing, cleaning up instead of building. Jordan B. Peterson. Motivation is about something radically different. Taking responsibility for your space, your mind, your time, and defending them like sacred ground. Because philosophy without structure is fantasy, and apologetics without discipline is just noise. So what do? You offer them a mirror. You give them 1, maybe 2 chances. But if the storm keeps returning, you walk away. Not because you're heartless, but because your life is not a battleground for someone else's refusal to heal. Peterson says, it's not virtuous to be endlessly compassionate. Sometimes it's cowardice masquerading as kindness. Save your energy for builders, because if you keep rebuilding someone else's wreckage, you'll never construct a life of your own. They never raise their voice. They never slam doors or throw punches. But somehow, after every conversation with them, you feel smaller. You ask if something's wrong. They say nothing, but their silence cuts deeper than any scream. Their smile hides a war you're not allowed to acknowledge. This is the world of the passive aggressor, a psychological assassin who never draws a weapon, but leaves you bleeding anyway. Jordan Peterson has seen this behavior destroy marriages, friendships, even entire families. He says, someone who refuses to say no clearly is also incapable of offering a real yes. In clinical psychology, passive aggression often stems from deep resentment, repressed anger that festers beneath the surface because the person never learned to express it honestly. It's fear dressed up as politeness, hostility wearing the mask of civility. From a neuropsychology standpoint, their brain has learned to associate confrontation with danger. So instead, they sabotage quietly, through avoidance, sarcasm, and veiled guilt trips. What makes them so dangerous is that you can't see the damage right away. There are no bruises, no fights, just an ever-growing fog of confusion, self-doubt, and guilt. They'll make you feel like you're too sensitive, like you're overreacting, like the pain you feel is your fault. But as Jordan B. Peterson often reminds us, truth is not optional. It's the foundation of sanity. He says, if you betray yourself, if you lie to maintain peace, you're not peaceful. You're obedient, and that obedience will kill your spirit. The passive aggressor thrives in environments of suppressed truth. They don't want clarity. They want control. Control through ambiguity, through withdrawal, through emotional debt you didn't agree to owe. This is where philosophy meets survival. This is where apologetics, the defense of truth, becomes more than an idea. It becomes a shield. So what do? You name the behavior. You reject the manipulation hidden in politeness. You call for honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. And if they won't come clean, if they refuse to speak directly, then you walk away. Because Jordan Peterson motivation isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about becoming someone who tells the truth, even when it costs you comfort. And if someone can't stand in the truth with you, they have no place in your future. They cheer you on. They tell you you're fine, just the way you are. They laugh off your bad habits, and they never, ever challenge you. They seem kind, supportive, even loyal. But beneath the warmth lies something more dangerous than hate. Permission to stay broken. Jordan Peterson calls this figure what they truly are: enablers. They don't push you forward. They keep you stuck. He says, a friend who doesn't call you out when you're wrong is not your friend. They're your leash. This kind of person rarely shows up in psychological horror stories because they don't scream or manipulate. They comfort. They nod. They smile while you destroy yourself. But in clinical psychology, enabling is considered one of the most toxic relational dynamics. It often stems from codependency, guilt, or an unconscious desire to avoid conflict at all costs. From a neuropsychology standpoint, enablers regulate their own sense of worth by being needed, even if what's needed is dysfunction. They'll tell you that rest is what you need when really, you're avoiding responsibility. They'll say, you deserve to be happy, while watching you self-sabotage day after day. They're not your enemy, but they are your undoing. Jordan B. Peterson. Motivation is built on the core principle that meaning comes through responsibility, through voluntary suffering, through confrontation with the truth, through effort and courage. And enablers? They rob you of all of that. In the name of kindness, they soften your edges. In the name of love, they let you drown. Peterson warns, beware of those who affirm your excuses, because they are secretly invested in your failure. This is not just a matter of philosophy. It's not intellectual. It's survival. Because if the people around you never challenge your flaws, your blind spots, your weaknesses, you will never grow beyond them. And while skepticism can destroy belief from the outside, Enabling destroys potential from the inside, quietly, lovingly, permanently. So what do? You examine the people who always agree with you. You ask yourself, are they celebrating my potential or pacifying my pain? And if they're more interested in your comfort than your character, you step away. Because true love isn't soft all the time. Sometimes it's fierce. And sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one who never says no. Not everyone who destroys your life will do it with malice. Some will do it with smiles, with stories, with silence, with need. And that's what makes them so dangerous. Jordan Peterson doesn't ask us to judge others quickly. He asks us to see clearly, to take off the blindfolds of guilt, obligation, and codependency, and look straight into the eyes of those who drain us. He says, if you're with someone and you're worse off because of it, ask yourself why you're allowing it. This isn't about blame. It's about boundaries. It's not about anger. It's about awakening. Because your life, your soul, is not a playground for chaos, manipulation, or stagnation. It's a sacred project. And every person you allow close to you contributes to the architecture of who you become. So ask yourself, who in your life lifts you toward order, strength, and meaning? And who keeps you crawling in circles of despair? Choose wisely, because the battlefield isn't always filled with enemies. Sometimes it's crowded with the wrong friends, and the price of that blindness is you.